We just had to not like each other for a bit.
You had to not like me, which
True.
came easy.
So easy.
People hated The Last of Us Part 2. It was massively divisive.
The Last of Us was plagued by complaints of bad casting. And The Last of Us 2 is not faring much better.
The creator of the show is finally speaking out about its failure. The Last of Us creator Craig Mazin admits Season 2 was a failure.
When Bella Ramsey stepped into Ellie's shoes, the world was skeptical. She didn't look the part. She didn't sound like a clone of the game's original voice. But the second she delivered her first line, raw, sarcastic, fiercely vulnerable, she became Ellie. And now, that story might be over. Abruptly, brutally. Not because Ellie's arc ended, but because the industry decided Bella's did. Alarming whispers are emerging. That The Last of Us Part 3 has been scrapped entirely, and worse, Bella Ramsey has been quietly cut loose from the franchise. No farewell, no announcement, not even a courtesy call. She found out the same way fans did, from leaks, rumors, and chilling silence. But Bella didn't stay silent. Especially not when someone she trusted, Pedro Pascal himself, allegedly turned his back on her. So before we dive into the real madness, make sure to smash that like button and hit subscribe. You don't want to miss what's coming next. The Last fans had officially heard about The Last of Us. Part 3 was laced with cautious optimism. Neil Druckmann teased possibilities in interviews, sparking widespread speculation across podcasts, forums, and Reddit threads. Countless articles peddled supposed leaks, trying to decipher the future of Ellie and Joel. But behind all that fanfare, a far different story was reportedly unfolding. One of quiet retreat rather than triumphant return. According to multiple anonymous insiders close to production, HBO had already made the call to shelve the series. There was no press release, no public-facing acknowledgement, not even a tweet to soften the blow. The decision was made in silence behind closed doors. Reports suggest that rising production costs, actor scheduling complications, and a growing belief among executives that the show had creatively peaked after its explosive first season all contributed to the sudden halt. But money and logistics weren't the only culprits. Behind the scenes, internal tension had been brewing for months. Creative differences between the network's decision-makers, the showrunners, and even the original game developers at Naughty Dog reportedly escalated into outright conflict. Bella Ramsey's portrayal of Ellie brought layers of emotional depth and raw vulnerability, but HBO allegedly wanted a more commercially friendly continuation. Rather than risk a third season that might fail to meet expectations, the network may have decided to quietly abandon the project altogether. And that decision, while seemingly calculated from a business standpoint, triggered a devastating ripple effect, one that hit Bella Ramsey the hardest. For fans, the alleged cancellation of The Last of Us was shocking, but what happened to Bella Ramsey afterward was downright cruel. Despite being the face of one of television's most iconic roles, Bella was reportedly cut from the franchise without warning, without ceremony, and, most painfully, without any official communication. HBO didn't issue a statement, nor did the creative team offer a farewell. Instead, Bella simply vanished from the project's ecosystem. Suddenly, her presence at promotional events ceased. Her name quietly disappeared from upcoming press tours. There were no more Ellie-themed Instagram posts, no more interviews or TikToks reflecting on her experience. Rumors soon circulated that Bella had been fired, not with a dramatic confrontation or public fallout, but through silent dismissal. One source claimed she only learned about it through a friend who worked on the production crew. It wasn't immediate. It wasn't dramatic. It was slow, unsettling, and deeply personal. Fans started noticing a change in Bella's tone during interviews. She seemed more cautious, less enthusiastic. On social media, followers dissected a now-deleted TikTok in which she spoke cryptically about letting go of things you love when they no longer want you. At first, it seemed vague. In hindsight, it was heartbreak in disguise, a breadcrumb left behind by someone grieving the loss of something deeply personal. While the cancellation itself was devastating, what hurt Bella Ramsey even more, at least according to those close to her, was the absence of support from the one person she expected would have her back: Pedro Pascal. For fans and media alike, Pedro and Bella weren't just co-stars, they were a dynamic duo. Their chemistry on screen was undeniable, and off-screen, their bond had been described as familial. Bella once called Pedro a second father. They laughed together, supported each other, and seemed inseparable during the show's heyday. So when the silence hit, Bella waited for a phone call, a text, some acknowledgement of what had happened. But according to insiders, none of that came. Pedro never reached out. Not after the leaks, not after the press went quiet, not when Bella needed someone most. That lack of response didn't just sting, it shattered her. Reports indicate Bella privately confronted Pedro over messages. Allegedly, she accused him of choosing silence to protect his own image, of staying loyal to HBO rather than to the person who had stood beside him during the show's meteoric rise. One of her close friends claimed she felt utterly abandoned, especially by someone she had trusted so deeply. Making matters worse were rumors that Pedro had known about the show's uncertain future long before it reached the rest of the cast. He had already been in talks with major franchises, including Marvel and Star Wars, suggesting his exit was planned well in advance. If that's true, then from Bella's perspective, she wasn't just losing a job. She was losing a friend who had already moved on while she was still in the fight. What came next wasn't a fiery rant or a scathing public statement. It was a masterclass in subtlety. Bella Ramsey responded the only way she could, quietly yet unmistakably. Fans soon noticed that her social media presence began to shift. Posts celebrating The Last of Us disappeared. Mentions of HBO faded away. She unfollowed key producers and removed nearly every trace of her time as Ellie from her public profile. It was calculated, deliberate, and louder than words. Then came the post that lit the internet on fire. A single black and white photo. Bella, standing alone in a doorway, her silhouette illuminated by faint studio lighting. Her head was bowed, her posture solemn. And beneath the image, just 5 words. Loyalty is louder than silence. No emojis, no hashtags, no tags. But it didn't need any. The fandom immediately recognized it for what it was. A public reckoning. Within hours, the post went viral. Justice for Bella began trending. TikTok creators dissected every detail. Reddit threads spun thousands of comments. The heartbreak was palpable, and the betrayal now had a face. Bella's. And in that moment, it became clear. She wasn't just mourning Ellie, she was calling out the silence that replaced support. As the chaos unfolded publicly, new reports emerged offering a glimpse into what might have led to such a dramatic fallout. Sources from within the production revealed a growing creative disconnect between Bella and the show's executive leadership. Known for her thoughtful approach and fearless performances, Bella reportedly lobbied for a storyline in Season 3 that leaned heavily into emotional complexity, one where Ellie would confront trauma, navigate loss, and potentially face her own mortality. It wasn't about shock value, it was about honesty. However, that vision didn't sit well with HBO. According to insiders, the network was pursuing something broader, a more marketable version of The Last of Us that could be franchised, merchandised, and tailored to global audiences. The kind of story that sells, not necessarily the one that resonates. Bella's proposal was seen as too dark, too niche, too emotionally demanding. Meetings reportedly grew tense. One showrunner even described the creative environment as cold and combative. Bella, while respected for her talent, was viewed as difficult, not because she was unprofessional, but because she refused to compromise on the emotional truth of Ellie's arc. And for a network that seemed increasingly focused on commercial viability, that made her expendable. As Bella Ramsey poured herself into the role and continued fighting for a story she believed in, Pedro Pascal was allegedly preparing for something entirely different: his exit. According to multiple insiders, Pedro had already begun negotiating with other major studios during the latter half of Season 2's production. Names like Disney and Marvel were reportedly in the mix, offering him roles in new high-budget franchises. While nothing was confirmed publicly, whispers suggest that he had already signed or verbally committed to one of these projects long before HBO's decision to shelve The Last of Us. Part 3 became known to the wider team. To fans, this revelation was deeply unsettling. Had Pedro mentally left the show while Bella was still giving it her all? Had he chosen career advancement over loyalty to the story, or worse, over the people who helped bring it to life? These weren't just questions about contracts or casting. For Bella, they were about trust. One assistant who was present at the show's final wrap dinner claimed that this was the moment Bella found out. The moment she learned Pedro had already made plans, that he was moving on. You could see the light go out in her eyes, the source said. It wasn't just a goodbye to the role. It was the realization that she had been left behind. In Bella's eyes, Pedro wasn't just her co-star. He was family. And when everything else was falling apart, she expected him to stand beside her, or at the very least, acknowledge what had happened. But instead, he vanished into silence. And to Bella, that silence spoke volumes. The impact of Bella's cryptic post was immediate. The caption, "Loyalty is louder than silence," became a rallying cry. Within hours, social media was ablaze. TikTok was flooded with fan edits of Ellie's most powerful scenes, paired with melancholic music and quotes from Bella's interviews. Reddit turned into an investigative forum, with fans dissecting deleted tweets, analyzing unfollowed accounts, and trying to piece together what went wrong. Petitions sprang up demanding HBO make things right, whether that meant reinstating Bella, resuming development on Part 3, or at the very least offering the fans and cast some transparency. But HBO remained completely silent. No denials, no clarifications, no acknowledgement of the rapidly growing public pressure. The silence only fueled the fury. To many, the lack of response felt like confirmation, a quiet admission that something had gone terribly wrong. This wasn't just a cancellation anymore, it was betrayal. Not just of an actress, but of a character, a story, and a community that had built itself around both. Bella's fans, and Ellie's fans, felt discarded, and they weren't about to let it go without a fight. A few days after the social media storm reached its peak, Bella Ramsey posted what appeared to be a final farewell. Not in the form of a tweet or a public statement, but through a short TikTok video that ran just under 30 seconds. There was no narration, no commentary, just grainy behind-the-scenes clips from the early days of filming The Last of Us. One moment showed Bella and crew members laughing between takes. Another showed a slow zoom in on Bella, wearing Ellie's jacket, her expression unreadable. The final shot was distant, Bella walking away from the set, her figure shrinking into the background, back turned to the camera. Playing softly beneath it all was a piano version of "Take on Me," the emotional callback to Ellie and Dina's bond in the second game. As the final notes faded, a simple message appeared on screen. "You'll always be my Ellie, even if they took you away." The video was gone within hours. Deleted, scrubbed from her account. But not before it racked up over 3 million views and tens of thousands of comments, many from fans who were brought to tears. It was understated. But for those who knew, it said everything. Just when fans thought the heartbreak couldn't deepen further, rumors began emerging from inside Naughty Dog, the very studio that gave birth to The Last of Us. According to reports from anonymous developers and industry analysts, The Last of Us Part 3 game had also been paused indefinitely. Not retooled, not quietly delayed, just shelved. Creative director Neil Druckmann, long considered the emotional and thematic backbone of the series, has reportedly shifted his focus to other projects, including new IPs and studio expansions. Some insiders say he's simply burnt out, while others suggest that mounting pressure from Sony to move on and deliver new blockbuster hits led to the decision. Whatever the reason, the result was the same. Ellie's story was no longer a priority, and to many, that revelation felt like the final blow. After years of speculation, emotional investment, and world building that spanned both games and TV, the very heart of The Last of Us, Ellie's story, was left unfinished. Not with a definitive ending, but with a whisper, a fade to black, a quiet, clinical erasure of something millions of fans had come to care deeply about. Ellie's story was never just about survival. It was never merely about infected monsters, crumbling cities, or warring factions. It was about something much more intimate, something human. At its core, The Last of Us was a reflection of grief, love, trauma, and the stubborn hope that sometimes pushes through even the bleakest moments. And for a brief, brilliant window of time, Bella Ramsey carried that narrative with honesty, rage, and grace. She was Ellie, not just in performance, but in spirit. And yet, the way it all ended wasn't cinematic. There was no final confrontation, no heroic sacrifice, no satisfying conclusion. There was only silence, a series of executive decisions made in boardrooms, far removed from the stories they affected. No explanations, no goodbyes, just budget cuts, strategic pivots, and reputational damage control. For fans who gave their hearts to the story, and to Bella's version of Ellie, The pain isn't just that the journey ended, it's how it ended. Abrupt, undignified, erased. This wasn't a narrative conclusion, it was a corporate shutdown. And if this is how Ellie's journey truly ends, then it's not because of a bloater's attack or a clicker's bite. It's because of betrayal, because of decisions made not by storytellers, but by those more concerned with profit than purpose. And that, for many, feels like the real apocalypse. Ellie deserved better. Bella did too.